we look forward to having a good games, and we look forward to all our Florida athletes being able to compete without fear or favor. And I know that we will bring home an awful lot of medals. So with that, I can take a couple questions.
Governor, can you say what it took to get the International Committee to agree with it? Legal action, or what kind of things have you done with it?
Well, I think Joe's office was negotiating back and forth, but I mean, we did pass the vaccine passport rule or law last year, as Joe had mentioned. And so they would have run afoul of that, and that would have subjected them to penalties. And that wasn't us like singling them out. I mean, that's just how the law operates. And so I think once they understood that, you had the situation where it wasn't a good look to be excluding these athletes, but then they would also face financial penalties under our law, which has been on the books for quite some time now. And so I think that Joe working with them, getting them in this spot. Look, the people in Florida totally understood it. They were always on the side of the athletes. These are folks that are outside of that and have just a little bit different, I think, overall worldview, which is fine. But, you don't have the right to impose that on Florida in violation of our laws. And so that's what I think was very clear. And at the end of the day, I think this resolution is going to be good for these Florida athletes. I am a little disappointed. There may be other athletes that maybe if you're in Hawaii, you're probably not going to be able to get to Orlando on 24, 48 hours notice. So there still may be some athletes who would want to compete, but because it took so long, maybe just logistically they won't be able to. And I think that that's really unfortunate. But it wasn't for a lack of effort on our part. They've been engaging in this and going back and forth. And finally, we were able to come to a situation where the athletes could compete.
Was there a clash between your office and Orange County in terms of making this happen? Was it
No. Orange County wanted them to. I mean, Orange County never said they didn't want them to compete. As far as I know a lot of people in Orange County are very excited about hosting the Special Olympics. I mean, my wife and I were very excited. We're honorary chairs of the thing. I mean, it's a big deal. We were here in Central Florida. Remember when we did the big thing with all the athletes in preparation for this? So it's something that is important and meaningful to us, and it just would not have been the same, with some of the athletes on the sidelines. So, well, it's not a hurricane, thankfully. But we do have a lot. So there's a system that's moved across the Gulf of Mexico. And it's an interesting thing because it's bringing a lot of rain in South Florida. Pretty much most of it's going to be south of I-4. You're going to get definitely southwest, southeast Florida. They're going to get a lot of rain all day today. There's not anyone in an emergency posture. People are just heeding basic safety precautions. You may want to be inside, but no one's going into emergency posture. We're ready if that's needed from Florida to do. We don't anticipate it at this point, but I think one of the things that's unique about this system is the rain is actually beating the wind. And so you're going to have a very rainy day today. And you're going to probably have a relatively dry but windy day tomorrow where the winds come on shore. That's usually they go together. So that's the latest update we got this morning from the National Hurricane Center, was that it had kind of disaggregated, which is a little bit different than the typical system. Now, looking forward, people say it's going to be a big hurricane. It's not going to be big. They have all these predictions. Look, we've got to be ready no matter what. A lot of these predictions aren't right either way. Sometimes they'll say there aren't a lot of storms, then you'll get a big storm at the end. And so our preparations are the same no matter what. You still have the ability to get supplies tax-free that I think lasts, I don't know exactly the date we get it, but I mean, that was something that we enacted that's very significant. So you're going to be able to get that relief there. And there's also going to be other ways that people can prepare. We now have, with the tax package I signed, you can actually do upgrades to windows and other things tax-free to your home. We just did the bill to mitigate the problems with property insurance, and some of it involved structural changes to our market so that we actually can get people that want to come here and offer policies and give consumer choices. But part of it was we provided funding through the My Safe Florida Home program, where you can actually get a grant grant, not wealthy people, but, middle and low-income families for their homes to make improvements. And there are certain improvements you make, you will get a reduction on your insurance rates. And so we're excited about doing some of those things. I mean, we're not going to be able to prevent a storm from coming to Florida. This is Mother Nature, but we can mitigate by doing some of those things, and I think it's much more attractive to make some of those improvements today than it was just a few months ago.
Governor, a lot of projects that were vetoed here in Central Florida, including a parking facility in Sanford and a fire station in Winter Park. Is there any specific reason why those projects were vetoed and others were not?
So, I mean, basically, my view was, if you look at the budget, we've had population growth, we've had a lot of inflation. So the budget top line is higher than it was last year, but not really out of line given that and given the growth of the economy. But I did set a limit that I was not going to go above $110 billion. And so we work with the legislator. There's some legislators, I said, hey, I've got 3 projects on the V list. I can give you one. What do you want? And then sometimes they would choose some of the things where it's more municipalities. We didn't do a lot of fire stuff for the municipalities. The reason is just simply, if I do one, then I've got to do all throughout the state. And so it's just trying to prioritize. You do have some areas that have a stronger tax base that maybe I would do for a fiscally constrained. Maybe you don't do it for one that's a little bit wealthier. And so there's a lot of different factors. But just because something was vetoed does not necessarily mean it didn't have any merit. We were just not going to go above a certain amount. And the result is, in Florida, we have record reserves in terms of our budget reserves. When I came into office, our rainy day fund, I think it was about $1.3 billion. It's now a record $3.1 billion just in rainy day. We're going to end this fiscal year, June 30th, with probably $21 billion in total reserves. That number will go down a little bit to start the new fiscal year, but we're getting revenue over and above the estimates every month that, we're looking at between $15 and $20 billion reserves, most likely. Now, one of the reasons why I wanted to keep that spending reasonable is because we don't know what's happening with the national economy. There's a lot of negative signals that's coming out. Obviously, we all know the inflation. You see it every day when you buy groceries, when you go get gasoline. You also see other issues that I think are having an impact. You're seeing interest rates being risen because of dealing with the inflation. And so the question is that going to slow down the economy? We did have negative growth in the last quarter nationally, not in Florida, but overall. What does that do? They did come out with 300,000 jobs, which, is not terrible, but that's not necessarily rip-roaring. So there's a lot of questions about what's going on. I think a lot of it is a result of really bad policies out of Washington. But the bottom line is we've got to protect our state for whatever may come ahead. I'm confident because of the decisions we've made, and I hope this doesn't happen, but if there would be an economic downturn and we would then not get as much tax revenue coming in to the Treasury, we will not miss a beat. I have adequate reserves where we will be able to plug any hole that we need. So we're going to continue on target with education. We had the largest education funding in the history of the state of Florida this year. We're going to continue with teacher compensation increases. This budget, the largest in the history of the state of Florida. We're going to continue with our conservation efforts and restoration of the Everglades and water resources, and that will continue, and we've done more than any administration's done on that. We're going to continue with infrastructure. We had a record amount of money go into the FDOT work program. I mean, I look around the state and, people want to visit here, which is great. People want to move here, which is fine, but, it puts a stress on the infrastructure. I mean, you go from Disney World to Tampa on I-4, and it's like you could just be stuck there any time of the day. So we want to do things to alleviate some of the really significant hot spots that we're seeing. So we're going to be able to continue all of that even if we have a slowdown in the economy. Now, I think because of all the things that have happened in Florida over the last couple of years, you remember the 2008, 2009 downturn, Great Recession. Florida did worse than most states during that. I mean, we got absolutely hammered. Parts of this region got hammered. Southwest Florida, Hammer. I mean, it was a total disaster for the state, one of the worst economic periods we've ever had. I think because of all the things we've done to really build a stronger, more resilient economy, if there is a national downturn, I think Florida will hopefully continue to outpace the nation, and I think that we've done a good job of protecting ourselves against, because, really 12 years ago was pretty much all eggs were going into tourism and housing, and that didn't end up working well. We've got a bigger industrial base now. We've got way more financial services. We've got a lot of stuff going on in the state of Florida, and even if the economy slows, tourism will slow, but because we're so much more attractive place to visit, because we don't have passports, we don't have all that stuff, we're still going to get, I think, pretty robust tourism numbers coming into the state of Florida, and we've really never seen anything. I got to figure out the numbers for Memorial Day, but I can tell you it was packed everywhere on Memorial Day, and these restaurants were packed, the hotels. So it's a good place to be for that.
Governor, one particular veto that's gotten some national curiosity, and that's the one of the Tampa Bay Rays facility. Did that have anything to do with the political statements that Tampa Bay Rays were making previous couple of weeks?
So I don't support giving taxpayer dollars to professional sports stadiums, period. And so at the end of the day, that was just the decision that was going to be made. Now, companies are free to engage or not engage with whatever discourse they want, but clearly it's inappropriate to be doing tax dollars for professional sports stadium. It's also inappropriate to subsidize political activism of a private corporation. So I think, either way, it's not appropriate, but we were not in a situation where use of tax dollars for a professional stadium would have been a prudent use. And again, I set that limit as to what we were going to spend, and we made sure that we were doing it. And so what we try to do with these projects, is doing things that really are benefiting the community as a whole, more so than maybe one specific interest or one specific company. Well, I think if you look at our budget that we just did today, or I signed yesterday, we had another major increase in funding for school safety and for mental health. And, when you're talking about school security, the thing is for whatever reason, I think going back to Columbine, this has become something where these deranged psychopaths have certain targets, and some of them go to schools as a way to kind of maximize the trauma to a community. They're very evil people. But what they also are is they do look for areas where they think they're going to be able to get away with it. The Buffalo shooter, for example, said, I'm going places where I don't have to worry about people concealed carry or anything like that, because they wanted basically sitting ducks. And so what I think we've done in Florida since I've been governor is make sure there's adequate security at schools, make sure that we follow the recommendations of the Parkland Commission. I'm going to be signing a bill probably within the next week that's going to continue on with the commission and make some additional improvements, and I think that that's something very important. Now, we're going to figure out definitively what happened with this response or not response, but I can tell you, when I got elected governor and I took office, I met with a lot of the Parkland families, and one of the things that they were so frustrated about was there was not an adequate effort to rescue their kids. There was not. The shooter didn't meet the quick resistance that he should have met. And you had a lot of folks that could have been held responsible, and nobody had been held responsible. And so when I came in, we decided to do something about that. We removed the sheriff of Broward County because nobody in this country in elected office has done more to support law enforcement than me. We have people flooding into this state, submitting applications to work in state agencies. Of course, after July 1st, you're going to get a $5,000 signing bonus, so why not, right? So we have that. When you had all the rioting and they were attacking police, you never saw me out there marching against the police. I backed the blue because I knew how important it was. But part of the reason I do that is because, and part of the reason I honor the service of the people who wear the uniform is because, you know, their duty is to put themselves in harm's way to protect the community. And that's not an easy thing to do. And you got to be willing to step up. And when those times call, they're not easy, but you have to be able to respond, particularly when you have people that aren't able to defend themselves. And so what we did with Parkland was say we're going to hold law enforcement accountable as well. And that's the thing. You could have the best security in the world, but if you don't have folks that are out there when it really counts, and which very well may have happened in Texas, then it's not going to amount to much. And so we support law enforcement more than any, but we also have very high standards. And we know in Florida they're going to live up to those standards, but we expect them to live up to those standards. And I can tell you when we held Broward accountable, it wasn't going to bring, you know, you could talk to like Ryan Petty is on the Florida State Board of Education. I appointed him, and he's been great and really a great voice on school security and school safety. It wasn't going to bring his daughter back, but to have some accountability to say, you know what happened there was wrong. This should not have happened. This guy had been in the system of school discipline and law enforcement. And we also did a special grand jury in Broward to identify problems in the school system. And you know what? That superintendent is no longer the superintendent down there as a result of what we did. And so accountability, I think, is very important. And it just seems like in our society now, if you commit like some infraction against like political correctness, you will have the mob descend on you. They will try to get you fired from your job, all that other stuff, which is obviously excessive. But if you're going to do that, then you have these big institutional failures and no one is held accountable. Who has been held accountable for the debacle in Afghanistan? I don't think a single person has been held accountable. Seems to me that that would call for some accountability. And again, it doesn't fix the underlying problem. It doesn't take back, you know, you're not going to get those 13 service members' lives back by holding people accountable. But I think it makes it less likely that stuff like that is going to happen again in the future. And so I'm proud of what we've been able to do. I think if you look at these 4 budget years since I've been governor, I think we're pretty close to $750 million with school safety initiatives, and that's something very significant. You also have the issue of mental health, and you know, my wife is very good on this, and you know, she will always tell me, you know, you have some deranged lunatic. That is not necessarily what we mean by mental health. Yeah, they probably have some mental problems for sure. Maybe there could have been interventions. But, you know, when we talk about mental health in the schools, a lot of these are just normal kids that are going through difficult times. You know, it's not like everyone that needs mental health services is a would-be school assassin. That's not true. And I don't want to lump them in together. But I also do think some of these people have so many warning signs, and it just gets ignored time and time again. The Parkland shooter clearly was somebody that was a big-time problem in terms of how he was behaving. And so we've done things like, since I've been governor, behavioral threat assessment, so that if somebody's in school, they're online posting that they're going to do some really bad stuff, that you take it seriously, that you understand that there may be people who are going to act against the best interests of the community, and that you not just kind of hope nothing happens, that you be more aggressive on it. And you have seen, I mean, you saw over in the Tampa Bay area, you had someone in Lee County that the sheriff was doing that. And that's really, I think, what you need to do, because these people, you know, they're so deranged, but they want attention and they want to do things that are going to be able to get their names in the headlines. I do think that when these things happen, we shouldn't even know the person's face. Though you're giving them too much credit. But we're going to continue to be very strong in terms of our school safety. I just think as a parent of young kids, it's something that's very sensitive to me and to my wife. And I'm happy to say in Florida, we've put our money where our mouth is. It was not something that we've ever skimped on. We made sure that we were able to do that. And this year is the biggest yet. And it's the right thing to do. All right, everybody. Thank you all. We appreciate it.